I just keep being surprised by the classic Mega Mans. Really. Like, every review we've done, except for one, so far has surprised me to some extent or another. I don't have a lot of strong memories of 4. I rented it, played it, and I had that little problem. I'm sure most of you actually understand this to some extent or another. It's when something's going on in your life that's either really good or really bad, and it sort of bleeds over into your memories of something you watch or something you play or something you do at the same time. So I was going through, I mean, it wasn't terrible compared to some of the other stuff I've experienced, but it wasn't exactly a good time in my life. So I didn't have any good, fond memories of Mega Man 4, and so as a consequence, I didn't buy it until years later, and I only played through it the one time. That is to say, the one time again, so it's 2 total playthroughs. That's it. Just the 2. Not counting challenge runs, obviously those don't count. So I didn't have a lot of knowledge, and I didn't have a lot of memory of Mega Man 4, so this was kind of just walking in, not quite blind, but just, kind of squinting a little bit through one eye. And this is a very good game. Holy crap. I'm blown away by how good this game is. So, Inafune took over formal directing duties at this point and started just actually using all the experience he got from 2, and most especially 3, into designing this one. We got in Yasuaki Fujita, who was doing the sound design, who did the music in 3, now is doing the sound design. We brought in this new person, Mine Fuji, who did the music. This is the first game that had Hayato Kaji. Hayato Kaji. There we go. I can do this. I can't read my own handwriting. That's the problem here. My handwriting's terrible. What do you want from me? This is his first Mega Man game, and he would be doing quite a few Mega Man things in the future. He's the one who came up with the idea for the charge, for example. Why don't we have the Charge Buster, which added a new layer of dynamic to things. What's funny is there are Mega Man games that have better levels and Mega Man games that have better bosses, but what Mega Man 4 does better than all of those that we've covered so far is polish. This game had weight behind it. Now, if you've been paying attention to this series, you know what that means, but it has been requested of me many times that I don't assume people watch every video I put out. So, to describe in brief, weight has to do with how much a studio prioritizes a particular production. This applies to shows, movies, games, etc., right? It essentially boils down to, well, you're a worker and you're working on something. You've got 2 things on your stack. You can work on game X or game Y, and you have to do something for both of them. So the one that gets your attention and priority is the one that's more important, the one that has more weight behind it. And so they tend to get first pick with things, and they tend to get the people they need, and they tend to get the support they need, and they tend to get the time they need, and the budget they need, and all that, because the weight is being pushed behind the project. If you're paying attention, by the way, this is the first Mega Man game that had weight put into it. 1 was just kind of thrown together. 2 was done in their spare time. 3 was delayed, and then they were like, okay, fine. And then it just had this terrible, terrible production. 4 was finally like, oh my god, the Mega Man games are selling. We should do something about that. Like, it just dawned on them all of a sudden. The Mega Man games were a thing, and were actually popular. But the weight and the polish are very obvious here. We have the intro, we have excellent sprite work, animations, doodads out galore, whole new weapon kit. The weapons are actually good again. One of the other Mega Man games that actually has good weapon design. We have the Rush stuff has been pulled down to be not insane, but still actually useful. We've got the balloon, we've got the wire cutter, we've got bosses, which are very carefully designed, so even though they have only 2 or 3 patterns per boss, each one of them is designed in a way to use those intelligently, and the terrain is designed to accommodate that boss and make it so that they gel together and work beautifully together. The music is excellent. I could just gush and go down the list, but I'm done. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. But there's a lot of things. I want to talk about the narrative first, as I tend to. Normally I talk about behind the scenes first. The problem is there's nothing to share. There's no big drama. They didn't lose anyone in the middle of the production. There wasn't demands from the executives or people quitting the project or, someone accidentally loses their saves or whatever. None of the usual stuff happens. None of the usual suspects. This was just, by every account I've been able to read, a smooth production to finished product, which is damned rare to talk about, let me tell you. Even some of the really good games we cover usually have a production cycle. You can quote me on that. So, not really much to share from behind the scenes. The story of this one finally actually codifies our behind the idea, the origins, and the backstory. Rock was originally, his name is Rock, by the way, even in American. His name was Rock, her name was Roll. And this is, by the way, the first time they actually accepted that. For those of you who remember, they were like, no, that's a dumb name. And they said the same thing about Blues, too, so that's cute. Anyways, Rock was made, Roll was made, there were housekeeper robots, but then Dr. Wily caused issues back in Mega Man 1, and so Rock, and I quote, having a strong sense of justice, requested that Dr. Light modify him to be able to help defend against the invasion, to defeat Dr. Wily, which was Mega Man 1. Then they briefly mentioned Mega Man 1 through 3, Dr. Wily's been defeated, but now there's this new guy on the block, Dr. Cossack. Don't pay too much attention to the fact that this game was being made while the Soviet Union was falling apart. Totally unrelated. Anyways, so Dr. Cossack, he's causing his own issues, and he insists the world needs to pay attention to him. Too long has the world slavered over the boots of Dr. Light. They need to see what a true scientist can do. So he redesigns 7 of his bots, all of them except for Ringman, actually, who was specifically designed to kill Mega Man, and he sends them after Mega Man. It's like, all right, let's do this. So then we have our premise, we have our backstory, we have a cool intro, it gets us in the mood, we've got good music, and we're off. Skipping forward a little bit, turns out Cossack has been manipulated because his daughter Kalinka was actually being held captive by Dr. Wily in order to force him to acquiesce to these demands. And Dr. Wily's able... spoilers! Spoilers, Dr. Wily's in this game, and the next one, 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 and the next one. And then we get to the X series where he's in X2 and X3. Anyways, point being, believe it or not, this is the one and only time it was this person, no, it was actually Wily trick, is actually used to good effect. It does a proper style of foreshadowing in that it does no foreshadowing. It is a genuine twist. It's just da-da-da-da-da, and then, oh, by the way, no, it was Wily the whole time. Which kind of tracks in the modus operandi, but otherwise is just interesting to consider. I do find myself wondering where the heck Cossack got all of the funds and resources to build this giant mecha castle of doom. Does everyone just have castles? I mean, Proto Man's got a castle, Dark Man's got a castle, and Mr. X has a mansion. Does that count? There's just castles all over the place. Maybe that's just how they do it. They just jump in. Maybe in the Mega Man universe, rather than those castles just being turned into tourist attractions, scientists move in and turn them into, robotic fortresses, and it's just... Anyways... I do like the premise, I do like the payoff, I do like the moments, I do like the ending. It's a good narrative. The only thing the narrative does wrong is towards the end, Wily just straight up escapes out the back door and then leads off in a disappointing to be continued. Now, I like Wily as a character. I do. But you remember how I mentioned how Sigma should have probably died in X6? I feel like maybe Wily should have stopped being a villain as of 4. And it's no surprise that in my own personal headcanon of this, which some of you have probably seen because that video is still live somewhere on the channel, I think about 4 was when it officially started shifting from Wily being the villain to Wily being an ally. It was a gradual shift. Each game kind of moved him a little bit further over here until by the time we get to Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10, Wily was officially an ally of Rock and had actually been redeemed as a character. A nice long transition kind of a thing. Food for thought. Gameplay-wise, normally I like to go really into the nitty-gritty, but the problem is, this game is best served by actually watching it. I know I don't like to say, go watch my streams, but go watch the stream for this one. For real. For real? There's so much attention to detail in the sprites, in the animations that they do. Each stage has very clear thought put into what should be where and when and why. There's even good indication, like you go through Dive Man stage, right? And the whole stage has been spikes and enemies and spikes and enemies. And then there's just this weird bottomless pit immediately after a mini-boss with no enemies and no indication that it's a threat. And it's like, well, that's strange. What's with that? And if you happen to be inclined, you drop down it, lo and behold, that leads to the wire power-up. And it's like, oh, okay. The mini-bosses are cool. I love the hippo boss. I love the whale boss. I actually rather like the snail boss as well in Toadman stage. Most of the boss fights are legit, with probably the only real exception being Toadman, and even that, considering how easy it is to completely stunlock him into oblivion, yeah, that's kind of problematic. But most of the boss fights are good. The only thing I don't like about the boss fights is they hit a little bit too hard. But even that is something that can be circumvented because you pay attention to their pattern and you go around them. It's like, okay, cool, I'm with it, right? One of the things that I find really nice about Mega Man 4 specifically, and I already alluded to this earlier, is the weapons. So I made a comment during the stream that I said, I don't mind using the weapons in Mega Man 4. I didn't even realize the significance of that until after someone else repeated it back to me. I think it was Dr. Winter specifically. But it's true. In most Mega Man games, I tend to default to Buster only. Now, part of that is because that's my personal favorite challenge run of Mega Man games, is to do Buster only runs. Part of that is because there's several Mega Man games where the weapons are either subpar or kinda suck. Looking at you, Mega Man 3. And this is true even of the X series. Most of the X games I prefer to go through Buster only, or if it's X4 and onwards, Saber only. That's my overall preferred style of play, right? There are very few Mega Man games where I actually enjoy using the weapons. X1 is one of them, 2 is one of them, and now 4 is one of them. Just having the homing missile, which is helpful. It has some glitches and flaws. I'm not going to dismiss that, but it homes in surprisingly well for a NES game. We've got the Pharaoh shot, which allows you to have a little bit of, it's not quite a shield, but it allows you to have this thing which you can just kind of bump into anything above you or fling a fairly large charge shot out in front of you. You've got the Skull Shield, which is actually an honest-to-goodness shield that allows you to actually defend yourself, and it'll eat projectiles or do damage to enemies as they run into it, because you can just keep it up and run around with it, which is very helpful. So it's an actually good defensive shield. The Woodman shield was a good offensive shield, but this is finally our first good defensive shield. We'll see what we think of Starman and Plantman's shield in the next couple of games. I don't actually know, but we'll get there. And then we have the drill, which is your big old bomb. It's your big hit going right in front of you. And of course, the explosion does a nice big AoE. It's kind of what Needleman's weapon probably should have been, if we're being honest with ourselves. We have the ring, which of course is a boomerang, which allows you to hit there and hit back, which has, it's kind of your catch-all weapon. It's kind of the equivalent of the Metal Blades, but unlike the Shadow Blades in 3, rather than trying to ape and nerf the Metal Blades, they said, well, why don't we take this in a new direction? And so now we have, and you could get it to bounce a couple of times. To my knowledge, you can only get it to bounce 2 times, but I'm not sure about that. You might be able to get up to 3 with good timing and practice. I'm not positive. Either way, it's very useful on quite a few enemies, especially considering it can attack at a diagonal and it returns back to you. Then we have, I say I got Skull, to dive, we talked about that, ring, Dust. Dust is a weird one. Dust is our AoE attack. You throw out a big hit, and as soon as it hits, it shoots out into, diagonals, I guess? Yeah, the 4 diagonals out in each direction, which is a great way to try and get ricochet shots or try to hit anything that happens to be not in your immediate path of attack, so that's cool. Brightman is actually a wonderful modulation on Flashman's weapon. So if you, in Flashman, back in Mega Man 2, you cast it, and it starts freezing everything. And it just stays that way until it runs out of weapon energy or until you zone or until you die, right? So it's just freezing, and then it runs out and you're out. Brightman's weapon is a stun. It uses a set amount of power, which is I think like a 1/6 or an 1/8 or so of your shot. And it stuns everything for a period of time, and then they move again. I like that substantially more, and I do think it's a good, like I said, a mutator on Flashman's overall approach. I think that's all of them. I'm probably missing a few, or missing one. I talked about, oh, of course, Toadman. Poor Toadman. I mean, at least he was designed to be an endangered species, am I right? Toadman's weapon is actually quite nice, though. It's a street sweeper. It's a cleaner. You hit the whole screen. Bam! You just get one big shot on everything. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it hits everything equally, and it's a very good way to, if you're in a panic situation, you've got a lot of enemies on the screen, to just get rid of all of them. So all of these have some kind of use, change how you attack, and have at least a small amount of utility. Most of them are more offensive than previous ones, so there's not a lot of utility, but that's why we have the grapple, that's why we have the balloon, that's why we have the rush jet, and we have the rush coil. And as usual, we start with the rush coil, which is awesome. Very good kit in this game. So we have a lot of options, with good stages, with good boss design, with good everything. What's wrong with Mega Man 4? Honestly, not a lot. The biggest complaint I had in the entire game was actually the refights, which I know I always dislike the refights. But in this case, they were especially egregious because the bosses are kind of mean. And you will drain a decent amount of your resources just getting through those bosses unless you know them quite well. And then you immediately go into a 2-phase Wily Machine battle, which is also pretty mean and hits like a truck. By the way, if you die on that, you get to do the refights over. I did the refights 3 times. Granted, we had a slight issue. That's on me. So, okay, when you shoot the drill missile, you can hit the shot again while it's in midair, and it'll explode wherever it is. I actually didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that. So I just kind of was trying to shoot the boss with the drill, and it was dinking off and doing nothing. I didn't realize you have to shoot and then detonate it and hit the detonation be the thing that actually hits the boss. Otherwise, I would have probably gotten it first try, but whatever. So, yay. It's got some cool stuff. I want to talk about a couple of specific things, if you don't mind, otherwise. One of the things that impressed me most is Ringman Stage. So at the very beginning of Ringman Stage, there's a rainbow platform here, okay? Now, the way rainbow platforms work is they're there, but as soon as you touch them, they disappear from left to right, and then they rebuild from left to right, and then you can stand on them again. The next time you stand on them, they repeat that cycle, okay? There's also a turret up here in the upper right, okay? And this turret will hit in an angle, in a fairly large angle, but, you know, a wide array, excuse me. But it won't hit everything. It won't hit directly below it, it won't hit directly above it, and of course it can't hit anything behind it. So, the way this works is you start the stage, and you beam down, and you land on the rainbow platform. Now, what happens is, of course, it goes away, and you plummet. Now, immediately, without being able to skip it, the game has now exposited to you exactly how the rainbow bridge works. Brilliant tutorialization. And you might think, well, what about that turret? Well, the turret can't hit you down below. So when you fall, you're actually safe, and you have a moment to recover yourself and process what happened. So if you happen to be playing this game for the first time, and pick this stage first, or if this happens to be your first Mega Man game, or this happens to be your first platformer, you still have a tool in your arsenal to be able to say, this is how this works. And I always love those little kinds of build into the level design tutorializations. It's one of my favorite things when it comes to game design. Mario World, X1, all sorts of games did that, and I love it. So that's awesome. And then it does the thing that every other Mega Man 4 stage does. Escalation. Every Mega Man 4 stage can be described as a staircase of escalation. Here's a concept. They're actually called themes in game design. So here's a theme. Okay, we escalate it, and sometimes they'll introduce another theme. Escalate, escalate, escalate. Then there's the boss. Every single one of the 8 stages does this, as does the initial Cossack stages. The Wily stages are more fun victory laps, if we're being honest with ourselves. But that's okay, because they are fun victory laps. And then they do some cool creative stuff that was just kind of pushing the boundaries of what you could do. The first Cossack boss, which is the other thing I want to talk about, has a soft enrage in a Mega Man game. I believe this is the first. If you don't know what that means, so a hard enrage is you have X amount of time to beat the boss. If you fail to reach that timer, he kills you or he becomes undefeatable or something, right? It's a very common thing. It forms DPS races. A soft enrage is, as the fight progresses, it gets more and more unlikely or more difficult to actually defeat the boss, either because the terrain is going away or because he's doing more incremental damage to you or whatever. There's lots of ways to do a soft enrage. In this case, the first boss, Mothoraya, or whatever it's called, just smashes down the platform underneath you. If you leave it up for too long, you will run out of platform, right? So, soft enrage. Now, it's actually really hard to do that because it's a pretty easy boss and takes a lot of damage, but you can see the concept. Second Cossack boss is even cooler. It's hard to explain. It's the middle chunk of a computer, and then the bottom and top chunk of a computer, and these two things go back and forth across the screen as the background. And they will, you have to slide under or jump in and slide in order to get in the middle for when it reforms, and the actual enemy you shoot is right up here in the middle. And there's little platforms to help you navigate. It's really cool and just kind of fun to go through. Unfortunately, for a game that I rate this highly, I don't have much else in the way of details to share. This is one of those just go watch the stream sort of situations, because there's a lot of specific individual things this game does very, very right. Wonderful enemy variety, excellent usage of its terrain in order to actually inform the gameplay and the design thereof. I believe this is, it got a replay plus, of course. I believe this is one of the first games we gave multiple graphics pluses for, because the graphics are legitimately gorgeous and very easy to tell what you're looking at and what you're distinguishing and how you play through it, and just, you can feel the polish. And if you know me at all, you know that I love the polish. I mean the polish. Sorry. I really do love polish when it comes to video games, shows, books, movies, etc. Because even something that isn't that great, which is presented very well, can still be very enjoyable. I do hope you've enjoyed this one. I need to come up with an outro for these one of these. I just need to standardize one. That's what I need to do. I need to just kind of come up with something and maybe decide that